Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the season finale of season 3 of the podcast, where we take all of the internet's wrestling content, dump it in the randomizer, we fire it up, and it chooses something, anything, from anywhere, at any time, for us to watch and review with you, the listeners. Now, this is the season finale. We've done another 30 episodes here in season 3, if you can believe it.
That is insane. We have to be close to 100 total episodes.
Oh, we are close. Yeah.
It is great. And then obviously when you factor in, which we'll talk about later, the bonus feed, well over 100, approaching 150, 200. But yeah, season finale of season 3. This is wild. We don't talk a lot about like time sensitive things or the passage of time because this is an evergreen show. But man, I don't know about you. Did you expect when we started this show in April of 2020 that we would be doing 3 full seasons and counting? Because listen closely, this is the season finale. It is not the series finale. There will be a season 4.
There will be, yeah. It's been 2 years and 3 seasons worth of the podcast, and yeah, we'll be taking a hiatus from the free feed briefly as we run the randomizer again. We load up for season 4. I got to go out. There's more internet wrestling content.
Exactly.
We got to go
See what else we can get.
Yep.
See
this season 3. We Ring of Honor, the Honor Club made it into the randomizer this year. So we got a couple of those episodes, and we've got some more deep cuts on YouTube that went in, and so there's a lot of stuff. We're gonna go and scrape the internet again, load up the randomizer, get ready for season 4, and in the meantime, if you're refreshing that feed and saying, this is not the week they're back, that's a bummer, and you refresh it again, it's not the week we're back, you can always go to where you just mentioned, the bonus content. We do a show every single week. We're going to continue to do that even when we're on a season break here from the free feed over at patreon.com/wrestling at random, or in your Apple Podcast feed right now. Click that subscribe button. It unlocks just loads of content.
It also unloads. It unloads audio into your ears, into your feeds, onto your computers.
So much audio.
Your iPhones, your Zunes, whatever you got. As we record this, there are 63 episodes of Wrestling at Random that have not appeared in the free feed. If you've never subscribed to the bonus content, they're all new to you. That is 2 seasons worth of content for you that you have never heard if you've not yet subscribed via patreon.com/wrestling at random or through the bonus content button that you can hit when you're an Apple Podcast. So just keep that in mind.
Or if you're listening in the future and we're behind some other sort of paywall, any of those
on a
paywalls,
spaceship.
That's right. It will unlock all of that content for you.
I like to think that in the future, we are riding in the Starcade 90 UFO with the Black Scorpion, or should I say Black Scorpions, because there were many.
So we've got our final show to talk about. What did the randomizer pull for us? It went and pulled WWF No Way Out from the year 2000, Season 2, Episode 1, if you're looking for it on Peacock. We're on the road to WrestleMania here. This show aired on February 27th of 2000. On the road to WrestleMania 16, also known as WrestleMania 2000.
Yeah, it was never officially referred to as WrestleMania 16. It's funny when you said WrestleMania 16, I'm like, I have no recollection of what happened at said event. And then I remember that, yes, much like the video game of the same name, it was just WrestleMania 2000. It's also during that sometimes awkward time period between, 2 of the big benchmark shows for WWF/WWE every year. This is between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania.
Usually a low rated, lower buy rate event on pay-per-view. This is
especially back then, because
a skippable show.
Yeah, they would go on to add, if I'm not mistaken, the Elimination Chamber for many years would be the thing that would sort of bridge the gap, be the big hook between the Rumble and WrestleMania, but we are nowhere near that yet.
No, it it wasn't until they split the championships into two championships, a Raw and a SmackDown title. Then whoever won the Rumble would go for one championship, and then this in between pay per view is where the other challenger for the other championship would be determined. But here, there's one champion. That champion is Triple H, and he will be facing Mick Foley, aka Cactus Jack, in this main event for the WWF Championship versus the career of Cactus Jack in a Hell in a Cell match. The show opened with just an awesome video package for recapping this Foley Triple H feud.
Yeah, video package that was mostly just a great promo from Mick Foley with very well edited together, as always on these WWF video packages and intros. Just footage of describing how we got to where we were. There'll be a second video package doing that in a more linear fashion later on, but it is noteworthy, and I'm sure we'll touch on it as we get to that main event. This is coming 1 month after we talked about it just before we pushed record to start the podcast. What I would have in probably my top 2 or 3 WWF/WWE matches of all time, the Triple H versus Cactus Jack Mick Foley street fight at Royal Rumble. Just an absolute war that you talk about, how guys get to certain points in their career. And yes, obviously Triple H was, he was a main eventer by this point, but I don't know that I've ever seen one wrestler do more for another wrestler than what Cactus Jack / Mick Foley did for Triple H that night at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, he was the gatekeeper to give you toughness, credibility.
Yes.
Was going through a war with Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, Mankind. And yeah, that was definitely the case for that street fight. It was an amazing match at the Rumble. And so,
that Rumble also had the great set with like the car coming through the entranceway. I'll always remember that. I think it's is
it Madison Square Garden?
I believe so. I think so. It was a very unique entranceway, immortalized in at least one, if not several, of the THQ games. Also, just noteworthy. You talked about, we talked about what Cactus Jack Mick Foley did for Triple H here in this match. He would go on to do the same, I believe, several years later for Randy Orton.
100%, yeah, and we'll talk about that career on the line stip and what happened after after the main event. So yeah,
well, because when they say, and they did kind of close that loophole a little bit, at least in theory, on the broadcast as they went through. But the first thing I thought when they said the career of Cactus Jack is on the line, I'm like, all right, well, he can just come back as Dude Love or Mick Foley or Mankind the next week. And while that may not have been what was intended with the storyline, stay tuned.
Confirmed, Royal Rumble 2000 was at Madison Square Garden. And yeah, this was the follow-up to that. So a lot of interest, so much so that this pay-per-view, like I mentioned, usually was skippable for a lot of fans. So it was a lower buy rate event. This one did incredibly well. They drew a very, very good buy rate for this pay-per-view in between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So a lot of interest in the comeback match here for these two, this time in a Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, I would guess it was almost entirely based off of, like you said, we're coming back with Foley and Triple H, and you saw them tear each other apart in a street fight. Just imagine what they'll do in a Hell in a Cell about a year and a half after the insane, terrifying, infamous Mankind versus Undertaker Hell in a Cell in 1998, where I'm sure everyone was thinking, well, if he did that then, what's he going to do now with his career on the line?
We are live at the Hartford Civic Center in Hartford, Connecticut. Cue the Whalers music whenever I hear Hartford, Connecticut. I'm thinking Brass Bonanza.
Former home of the Hartford Whalers. Always a great story about this arena, that it basically is attached / inside / part of a shopping mall. That was always the joke with the building. And we have very early on, we'll get to it in the intros, which, by the way, this opener, which is the Intercontinental Championship, Chris Jericho defending against the European champion Kurt Angle. Each guy during their intro when they come out, they each cut a promo, which I don't know that I've ever seen that on a pay-per-view before. Two guys, two entrances, they each cut a promo on each other. A different way to get this started. And China, who's kind of the manager, I guess, for Chris Jericho, she gets her own entrance complete with a pyro gun.
Yeah, we'll we'll get to that in a minute.
It's like the Bad Blaster. I'm waiting for a top rope sunset flip.
And yeah, Angle did mention the Whalers in his promo that he did coming out. But first, before I did want to mention that this was a legit sellout crowd, 12,551. They paid 451,625 gate and another 97,126 in merch. The overall company gross for this event after pay-per-view buys was approximately $5.8 million. Very successful show.
Yeah, I would say so. Again, also taking into account that this is a show between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, which is a bit of a dead zone. I mean, ratings would go up for TV, but pay-per-view wise, you kind of would just feel like you're killing time between those two.
So you mentioned it, Intercontinental Championship. Kurt Angle's European title, not on the line here. Kurt says, unlike the Whalers, he will return one day as champion.
It's the very generic-looking Intercontinental Championship belt, by the way. There have been
the oval version.
It's the one that screams, "This belt does not mean anything anymore." Sadly, like it was not as meaningless as it would be a few years later, but it was far less meaningful than it was just a few short years ago.
China gets her own introduction, like you mentioned, and I thought she came out with like a t-shirt cannon, and then I was shocked that it was going to shoot pyro off. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it's the first of several weapons of mass destruction that we see, whether it be live or via video package, that are unleashed, that are a bit terrifying.
Yeah, she's in Jericho's corner, and
which is so weird. I have no recollection of the Chris Jericho China friendship.
No.
I remember the opposite very clearly, but my brain blocked that one out. I just don't recall.
There's a few of these. We'll talk about another one of these in the Hardy Boys match here coming up.
Yes.
So, so after Jericho's promo, Jericho and Kurt Angle. Now, this is Kurt Angle. He debuted in November, so 3 months before this match was his debut.
Meaning his main roster debut on TV. He had been doing dark matches. He had done a little bit of developmental, but as far as people seeing him on television, he had only been on for 3 months at this point, and he was great. He was pretty much in ring the Kurt Angle he would be fully formed this early on. We've talked about it. The list of wrestlers who are this great right off the bat
who are naturals, incredible.
It's extremely limited. The only other guy that I can remember, and this was what a lot of people compared Angle to just in terms of being such a prodigy right out of the gate, was Jun Akiyama, who when you first saw him debut, it was like, oh my God, this guy is the next guy immediately. And Kurt Angle in his own way, very similar.
Yeah, and was just so incredible in the ring, but also wildly entertaining and very charismatic on the mic as well. Just a total package out of the gates. Just so
the comedic timing. I think that was the thing that I don't know that anyone would have expected out of a guy that was an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, you just think about, like, in wrestling history, the guys that come from that very legit amateur wrestling, whether it be Jack Briscoe, or you think about later Brock Lesnar, or Dr. Death Steve Williams, like these sorts of guys that come from legitimate athletic backgrounds, whether it be wrestling or college football or something. They're usually tough, burly, hard-nosed, grinding type guys, but you don't think of them as being over the top, sort of borderline ridiculous characters. Whereas Kurt Angle was like, he had everything. He was incredible. And like we said, he was so great right out of the gate on all fronts.
And we saw it here as Jericho and Angle, they start out fast. This was a fast start. Kurt takes a huge backdrop over the top to the floor.
How about right before that, the drop toe hold into the first rope, which is a terrifying spot.
So scary.
It's one of those where you think, oh, there's tables, there's barbed wire, there's fire, there's ladders, there's glass, all these things. There are not too many things that are more legitimately dangerous and could alter or end someone's life in a wrestling ring than how they hit a rope throat first. And this looked like a disaster averted, crisis averted to me. This was scary.
Crisis averted again when they were fighting outside. Jericho gets thrown into the steps, but leaps to the top of the steps and hits a moonsault, almost killing himself, but he
Yes.
hit it just enough. I was
He,
so scared he wasn't getting over.
he was able to get his hands down like he would sometimes in the ring, get his hands down enough to then help himself complete the rotation. It also is the first of several times on this show where it's these signature moves, these moves that we know, and they have specific, names specific to the wrestler, but they had not yet been given those names, or they weren't being called those names yet in the WWF. So here he hits this move on the floor, he hits it or tries it in the ring several times, but instead of it being called a lion salt, Jim Ross just calls it an acai moonsault, which is accurate, but it's just so funny to not hear it with its sort of gimmick name.
They get back in the ring with an Angle belly to belly off the top rope. Loud Angle sucks chants, and he's yelling back at the fans just like a seasoned pro.
Yes.
He keeps the heat on Jericho, and Jericho then is able to fight back. He blocks a Jericho blocks the Rana attempt with two power bombs, stacks him up, but Angle counters into an armbar, then transitions into the cross arm breaker style armbar until Jericho gets the ropes.
This was so non WWF as far as these mat transitions, submission transitions. Is very, very cool. And again, crazy that this was so early on into Angle's proper WWF career. Also, just wanting to mention how great Jim Ross was. And that is something we'll be talking about throughout this entire show. But Jericho hits a flying forearm, and Jim Ross is so incredible here, selling this as a great near fall. It takes me back to earlier days of Jim Ross as well, into the WCW days, where he could take a 3-star match and make it seem like a 4.5-star match with his commentary. And that's kind of what he was doing here.
Oh no, he was in just top-notch form. Like, this is 2000 JR. He's still hitting home runs here. Like, he had a fantastic night, making everything seem so important.
He still is able to, which he did here on the show, he still is able to meld the over-the-top attitude era Jim Ross righteous indignation style calls with his Mid-South WCW heyday of just calling the action in such a way that it made the wrestling itself seem even more exciting than what you were seeing. To your point, he was at the top of his game.
Angle hit an Olympic slam and gets a long 2 count, but Jericho kicks out. Angle's freaking out, so he goes outside, grabs the Intercontinental title. The ref tries to take the belt away from him. Jericho is able to put the walls of Jericho on Kurt Angle, but he gets the ropes for the break.
Booing from the crowd. They did not like that rope break.
This is a great crowd too, by the way. They were awesome. They were awesome all night.
I mean, they had a good reason to be. This was a solid opener. We've seen some shows that had openers that didn't necessarily, give the crowd a chance to really get into it. That was not the case here. They're out on the floor now. Jericho hitting some chops. They're by the announce table. Kurt Angle grabs the Intercontinental title, tries to hit China with it. Jericho hits Angle, though, stopping it, knocks him into China, into the steps. So we've got a bit of a distraction now for everybody involved, including the referee.
Yeah, China goes lower back first into those steel steps. Back in the ring, the referee checking on China. Jericho goes for the lion salt, but Angle has the Intercontinental title,
which has been sitting in the ring for like 5 minutes. The referee did not sweep it out when he was looking at it, and I'm like, yep, that's getting used. And it did.
It did. Angle has the IC title, hits Jericho with it as he's coming off with the moonsault. Angle covers him, gets the pin. New Intercontinental Champion, Kurt Angle. He is a dual champion, and we have ourselves quite the hot opener. So thumbs up to that.
The Eurocontinental Champion, as he would call himself later on during the show. It is strange, though, when they do these sort of like damsel in distress angles with China, because they want to have it both ways. They want to have her be this absolute killer, but then they'll do something like this where she gets hit into the steps, and then it's, I don't know, it just came off kind of weird, but the match still is very good. Earl Hebner, Tim White arguing in the ring afterward. Earl Hebner trying to say this shouldn't have been the finish. Tim White was saying, yeah, it should be. It was also very strange to hear Jim Ross calling the referees and referring to their names, because both those things would change in relatively short order. Referees would only be allowed to be referred to as officials, and they would not have names.
Michael Cole in the back talking to the Dudley Boys. They recap Bubba's loss to Mr. Ass. Sucks to be Bubba.
It's also hilarious how, like, Mr. Ass is his only name at this point. They're not calling him Billy Gunn. And so Michael Cole, who, by the way, we've fallen so far from the days of Gene Okerlund doing these backstage promos. Michael Cole is back there in blue jeans, a red shirt, just with his hand in his pocket, like a total dork doing these interviews. It just makes me sad. But yes, it's not Billy Gunn. It's Mr. Ass. And then why in the year 2000 is Bubba Ray Dudley still doing this terrible Southern accent? Ugh. What is this? It's like that ECW promo we talked about from at least 3-4 years prior on a previous podcast. We're like, what is this voice he's trying to do? He's still in 2000 and not mastered it.
WWF Tag Team Championship. Perhaps the greatest team in WWF history, says JR.
The word perhaps is exhausted from doing so much work in that sentence.
He says this as the New Age Outlaws come out. Disagree.
Yeah, I mean, you could disagree just with the team across from him, much less two of the other teams that would be on this show and so many other teams that we've seen just in the WWF, much less throughout the professional wrestling world. That being said, and I think we've touched on this before, it is very easy to forget how insanely over the New Age Outlaws were, or I guess to be more clear, how insanely over their entrance and their catchphrases were, because my God, as their music hits and Road Dogg is doing his whole spiel as they come to the ring, these people are losing their minds.
The Road Dogg does his shtick, and I am having the same thought as you. I'm like, this is right up there with the Worm in things that were super popular that, like, always, like, annoyed me. I never got it. Like,
we'll get to that later. I have a specific thought during the Too Cool and Rikishi 6-person tag, because that took me back to some 3.5 years later. The only time it's probably the closest I ever came to giving up on watching pro wrestling. So I'll relate that story a little bit later.
So like the shtick, it's so over, and it wasn't for me. But yeah.
Well, what it speaks to is what we've talked about before on this podcast: the differences between WWF crowds and WCW crowds, and it's not a value judgment; it's just a point of fact. That what you just described, the Worm, this entrance, that is what WWF fans by and large went to see. They went to hear the catchphrases, see the very few, the signature moves,
and they wanted to sing along with the catchphrases.
Yes, they wanted to sing along with the catchphrases. They wanted to sort of see the meme moves before memes were a thing, and things that were different, or like different twists and turns, things that weren't necessarily what they knew wrestlers did. That wasn't what they were there to see. Whereas WCW fans, it was the opposite. And so we've got a lot of that here on this show in early 2000.
We get a quick clip of the SmackDown show where Billy Gunn does a famouser on Bubba Ray Dudley, putting him through a table. That was super impressive looking.
Well, what was super impressive about it was that Bubba Ray Dudley is on a table set up in the ring. He is standing on the table. Billy Gunn does not jump off the top rope or the second rope to do this famouser. He is able to, from a standing position, jump high enough to get his leg over the back of Bubba Ray Dudley's neck, as Bubba Ray Dudley is again standing on a table. This is one of the more
super impressive.
It's one of the more athletic feats I've ever seen in a pro wrestling ring. As ridiculous as that may sound, you have to go back and watch the show just to see that.
Their opponents, the challengers, are the Dudley Boys. Bubba immediately hits the full Nelson drop early in this match, and I'm quickly reminded how dumb that move is.
The Bubba Bomb, that again is not called the Bubba Bomb because none of these move names were in place yet. But yes, never a big fan of that. What I'm also not a big fan of here is that in this match we hear, and then we probably hear it at least a half dozen times throughout the show after this match, they don't ever call them the Dudleys. Jim Ross constantly calls them the damn Dudleys. Like it's their name. Like it is their tag team name. Like if there was one of them, first name would be Damn, last name would be Dudley.
Teddy Long is the referee here. I'm always surprised when he pops up. He still has the weirdest career in wrestling history.
100%. Referee to like a main event level or near main event level manager to announcer to referee to general manager, and I believe went back to
referee. Yeah.
And then would show up occasionally as a guest general manager, looking the same age the entire time,
if not younger.
He's like the reverse JJ Dillon, I guess.
So Bubba hits Billy Gunn with a lead pipe in the shoulder outside the ring. The Dudleys hit the 3D on the Road Dogg and get the pin. New WWF Tag Team Champions, the Dudley Boys. Billy Gunn legit suffered a ligament tear in his rotator cuff and further rotator cuff damage 5 days before the show and needed surgery. So he came back to just drop the belts and do an angle to tell the story of why he was injured and needed surgery.
That explains a lot about this match. It was short. There was really nothing to it. They did that lead pipe shot, as you said. We had a bit of an argument in the ring between Road Dogg and Mr. Ass. And yes, they are no longer the tag team champions. Jim Ross says that he doesn't ever recall on a pay-per-view there be a time where there were back-to-back title changes. What?
Yeah, maybe to open a show.
Maybe. I feel like that's probably still even possible. I don't know. It struck me as maybe a bit of hyperbole.
The key is they're calling out that this is a night of title changes, so that you're thinking, hey, maybe this won't be Mick Foley's last match. He might win the championship.
I hate when they do that because the second they do that, that telegraphs that the opposite is going to happen. It's just like when an announcer is screaming about, oh, the match is definitely over now. You hit him with this move, or 1, 2, 3, you got him. You always know that that's going to happen. The opposite of what the announcer says. We go from there. Kurt Angle is celebrating with the fans in the lobby of the Hartford Civic Center like a madman. This is great.
Awesome. This is awesome.
We then go outside where it is clearly a very foggy night in Hartford. We then find out that this show is presented by something called phonefree.com. Make free long distance calls over the internet. So is this Skype?
It's via voice over IP. It's Vonage before Vonage. This is an early VoIP provider.
I'm sure those calls were great in 2000.
Last Monday on Raw, we see Viscera, Big Vis, the former King Mabel. We see Viscera and 500 pounds of him splashing 77-year-old Mae Young. Mae Young is pregnant with Mark Henry's baby, and Henry and Viscera got into a fight in the back. One of the most legendary, horrible storylines in the history of pro wrestling.
Well, it culminated with Mae Young giving birth to a hand, correct?
A rubber hand. That's correct.
One of those moments that is the most crystal clear 2020 vision windows into the brain of Vince McMahon.
It was horrible at the moment.
Oh, yes.
It never got better with age. That's
it didn't. Sure. It is right up there with Katie Vick in terms of things not aging well.
Never, no.
What did age well and what absolutely broke me was hearing Howard Finkel, in which, by the way, it was so great to hear Howard Finkel on this show.
So great. In 2000, still got Howard Finkel.
But hear Howard Finkel in Howard Finkel voice say, "Sexual chocolate, Mark Henry." I lost it. It was wonderful.
No, it's great because you also had the sexual chocolate music in the
Yes,
background. Yeah,
yes.
no, this
It
was
was
this is a fun entrance for Mark Henry, taking on Viscera, who immediately beats up Henry. Mae Young runs down. She gets in the ring, and then she gets shoved down hard. This woman is legit 77. She is shoved down hard by Vis. He goes for the splash, but Henry hits a pounce and then slams Viscera and gets the pin.
he won with the body slam in the year 2000. I don't know if this was a throwback to they're
I
1 month out.
I
They're
consider
one
it the pounce was what knocked him out in the for good measure hit the body slam.
I'm going with the body slam. This is 1 month out from having Royal Rumble at MSG, and that feels like an ode to those 70s Madison Square Garden shows. Yeah, there was not a whole lot to this. Viscera did hit an awesome spin kick and then like invented Randy Orton's career by hitting a punt kick out of nowhere. That did not leave to the finish, though. It was, as you said, a body slam. This was so unnecessary to be on this show, but
Did not need to be here. That whole storyline doesn't need to exist. But here we are. Jericho's in the back. He says if Angle keeps celebrating, he's going to put a stop to it later tonight.
yes, and he calls Lillian Garcia, who's doing backstage interviews here, which is strange to see her doing that instead of doing ring announcing. He calls her Vivian, which was a running gag at the time, Jericho getting people's names wrong. We then see backstage Billy Gunn with medics, with EMTs, trainers in the locker room. And he's unintentionally hilarious here. He just screams, he just hit me with something and I can't move it. This kind of reminded me of early heel turn Smoking Guns Billy Gunn on that SummerSlam show when he was just saying the lamest things, but the delivery was so great during that 4-way tag match that it was actually gold. This kind of reminded me of that, but yeah, I guess to your point, that was the way of writing him off for a while he recovered from his injuries. Then the Hardy Boys music hits, and who accompanies them? I'm going to pause for a moment and let you, the listener, think who could be the Hardys manager here in early 2000.
If you're thinking, well, Lita would be too obvious. So maybe was this the time that Michael P.S. Hayes was the manager? No, that's not it either. Terry Runnels and her underboob come out to accompany the Hardys.
What?
I do not have any memory of this alliance at all.
No.
Zero recollection.
None. The only thing I feel like maybe I'm making this up, but did she actually in the WrestleMania 2000 game come out with them and she would be ringside with them when you play the game? I don't know, but yeah, that I have no recollection of this. It's so weird. They're really young. She's not as young. The looks just don't match up at all. We should also note how insufferable Jerry Lawler is with Terry Runnels out there. You can just imagine. There's also some storyline with the Acolytes, the APA. She's employed them to watch her because she's afraid of being attacked by somebody.
The Dudleys had put her through a table before.
That's right. Damn Dudleys. That's right. I have in my notes. We get another damn Dudleys reference by JR. They had put her through a table. That is correct.
The Hardys' opponents are Edge and Christian. Now, this is building to the Dudleys as champions. You have the Hardys versus Edge and Christian in a number one contenders match to see who's going to Mania. This is building to the triple threat tables, ladders, and chairs match at the WrestleMania 2000 that kind of put that match and these teams on the map. That was their big coming out party. Was that match?
Wasn't there some combination of those teams that had a ladder match or something along those lines at the Rumble as well that
Correct.
sort of led to all this?
Exactly. And then,
Edge and Christian versus the Hardys, right?
Exactly. That is correct. So they're coming to a normal match here at this point.
Match, it's kind of strange because both teams are faces, but you've got the Hardys who are faces, but they're managed by Terry, who's always a heel. And then the Hardys are kind of wrestling as heels in the match. And this is also like neither of these teams, particularly the Hardys, but neither of these teams are anywhere near the level of popularity that they would be later um, with the WWF fan base. Their signature moves are nowhere near as over as they would be. So the action in here, in between like some really oddly timed reverse chin locks that go on for too long, the action is very good. And this is one of those matches that, to the point I made earlier, if this match happened in WCW, with these guys' experience level, the WCW fans would have been going crazy for it. But here, for the most part, the fans were like, they weren't chanting boring like we got at other points a few times on this show, but they weren't super engaged either. Maybe they were just thrown off by that weird sheer shirt that Christian was wearing. I had forgotten that he used to wear that. And it was particularly strange here because it was a white sheer shirt. At least usually it would be black. I don't know why he wore that. Maybe it goes back to the Brood days, but it just looks strange. It's sheer, it's like mesh. It just is odd. It's an odd look.
The opening move was Jeff missing the Whisper in the Wind. So we are off to an awesome start.
Which didn't have the name, though. Again, it's another one of those signature moves that wasn't quite established yet. And so they don't have the move for it. But yeah, he did not hit that. So I'm sure you were thrilled.
I was thrilled. I'm like, this match is going to be awesome already.
So,
I can tell.
To be clear, you don't hate the move, though. You hate the name of the move. And the name wasn't said here, so you should have been fine with it.
I hate the name of the move, but I'm also not a fan of the move.
Really?
I'm not a huge fan. It looks kind of sloppy. Like, it's, I'm not a big fan. The Whisper in the Wind can go away. and take the name with you while you go.
There you go.
These four guys are in their 20s, we're told frequently by JR, and they are moving. These guys are quick.
Quick and creative. There are a lot of very unique, not overly complicated, but just different plays on normal tag team conventions or spots that you would see. And that, again, goes back to my point where there's some really cool stuff that I feel like with a different type of crowd would have been far more appreciated than the fans that were there in the building, where it seemed like a lot of the nuances, that the way the match was structured, you could tell the wrestlers were expecting for those things to get reactions, and they really didn't.
Hardy's with heat on Christian. They hit all the classic Hardy spots. Jeff comes off the top and he comes down into the boots of Christian in like your favorite. The no idea what you would have hit if Christian didn't get his feet up move.
It's the Arn Anderson special. And Arn would come off the second rope doing nothing and then just aiming his chin into the waiting feet of his opponent. That's what happened here with Jeff Hardy. I can't say I expected that. I did want to mention that it's jarring to see fast, agile, quick moving Matt Hardy.
Yes, because seeing all four of these guys in modern times, when you see them 20 plus years earlier, it's crazy how fast and quick they were. And watching this was awesome. And the hot tag gets made to Edge, and he runs wild. And here's JR again in 2000 calling this part of the match. Great stuff. Just he was so into the young guys. He's like, these guys are all going to be future superstars and main eventers. Right. And he was not wrong. And he was trying to tell you, this is serious business. These guys are the present of the tag division and the future of the singles divisions.
Yeah.
And he was spot on.
He absolutely was. It also, just going back to your point about all these guys in modern times, I don't know that if I was watching this match, I would have picked out Christian as the guy who would lose the least off his fastball 20 years later. But he to me, of these four guys in modern times, is by far the best in ring.
I'll give Edge in modern times a tip of the cap for, coming back from the neck injury he did to still be at that. If he didn't have that injury at this level, he might still be at he might still be at Christian level. But
true.
He's all four guys look great here. Edge
Matt Hardy I have to mention, he had an awesome top rope elbow drop.
He did,
as
Macho Man style.
I was just gonna say, as good of a non-Randy Savage elbow drop off the top as you've ever seen.
Yeah, they had both men were were down, and Christian stops Jeff, and that's when Matt comes off the top with the flying elbow onto Edge. Jeff crawls over for a near fall, got the long 2 count after that. Edge comes off the top, but Jeff hits a drop kick. Both men tag out. Matt beats up both Edge and Christian, and then he puts Edge on his shoulders in like electric chair position. And Jeff comes off the top like he's going to go for the Doomsday device. But Edge with a victory roll as Jeff goes flying over them, hitting Christian. So Jeff has Christian pinned while Edge has Matt Hardy pinned. Both men kick out.
Great spot. Just awesome stuff. And there's so many things in this match that, while it will not be thought of as being as memorable as, ladder matches, TLC matches, and rightfully so, you can see the blueprints of modern 2020s tag team wrestling just all over this match. And you can see how influential these two teams were on so many of the guys that came after and are dominating the scene right now.
Well, just think about the tag match we saw earlier with the New Age Outlaws and the
Yes.
Dudleys. Like different. It totally
It's
felt
like out of
a
a different
era. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, out of a different universe. Pardon the pun. We then get a great double team move with Matt Hardy in one corner, Jeff Hardy in the other corner. Matt hits a top rope leg drop at the exact same time that Jeff is hitting a top rope splash from the other corner. It's similar to the super finisher for Sabu and Rob Van Dam, just without tables involved. It's kind of similar to what we saw end Jinsei Shinzaki and Hayabusa in that ECW tag team title match at Heatwave 98, which we reviewed in the bonus feed and in a one-time only thing. I believe it was earlier this season. Put it in the free feed.
Patreon free feed, yeah.
A very popular show this year.
Edge made the save before that 3 count after that spectacular move. Jeff goes for the poetry in motion, but Edge catches Jeff with a spear in midair. Huge reaction to that.
Great. Very easily could have been a finish. Matt then counters another spear attempt into a twist of fate, which also the name of that is not mentioned. It's just a neck breaker.
Terry gets on the apron. She shoves Jeff Hardy off the top turnbuckle. She slaps Matt. He turns around into the kill switch, unprettier, whatever you want to call Christian's finish. And Edge and Christian win, and they're confused about why Terry helped them. Matt grabs Terry by the hair for an answer, and the APA quickly beat up the Hardys. And Farouk has a tough time getting Jeff up, almost loses him on this Dominator, and just murders him by hitting the Dominator, dropping Jeff
my God.
I was horrified. I texted you immediately when I saw this. I'm like, oh my God, I just saw Farouk murder Jeff Hardy.
This is the Tiger Driver 98 of Dominators. This was terrifying. It was part pile driver, part power bomb from a Dominator position. Horrifying stuff. Jeff somehow survived. I will say that I refuse to acknowledge that move as the unprettier, as the kill switch, not even the pulp friction. It will forever be known as the Tamikaze.
Ah, there you go.
Tommy Rogers in ECW would use that move. This was really fun. I wouldn't say it was great, but it was very good and very different from anything else on this show. Also wanted to mention one other horrifying or terrifying, whatever word you want to use, spot. Jeff Hardy hit an awesome, spiking Frankensteiner on Edge. He then goes for it again, and Edge hits the scariest power bomb you've ever seen. He goes falling back towards the ropes as he power bombs Jeff. He hits the back of his neck on the rope, and again, I'm worried that somebody's going to have serious injury due to bottom rope issues, but he's somehow okay. This was a very ambitious match that hit almost all the marks, and as much as
they would
as
blow it out of the water
now,
by a million in their WrestleMania match. It's crazy when you think about all the great matches that these two teams had together.
Well, they were each time they went out, they were laying the groundwork for what would come next in their own careers, and then, as we said, really laying the groundwork for the style of tag team wrestling that would take over in the next few decades.
Big Show is in the back. He had his feelings hurt because he showed the Royal Rumble footage where he should be heading to WrestleMania because he won the Royal Rumble. He shows the footage again. Rock's feet are on the floor, before Big Show hits the ground as he's flying over the top rope. But unfortunately, like with the video, they cut off Rock's feet. You can't quite tell. But
you can 100% tell.
Yes, everyone can tell, but they're trying to convince you that you can't quite tell. But
how was this a controversy? It's like 100% obvious. I don't know how anyone could look at Big Show as anything other than the most sympathetic babyface who is screwed over by the wrestling company. It's even with them like cropping the video so you don't see the Rock's feet. His feet have to be hitting something because the rest of his legs buckle, and then the movement carries show over.
No, there's no controversy in watching this, but they were
that's what I wrote.
Trying to manufacture controversy.
How is there a controversy? And this was, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't this? This was a screw up. This was a botch, and they had to work their way out of it. They did the best they could. This is a very earnest promo from Big Show here. We then see that on Heat, Taz with 2 Z's because he's a bumblebee, I guess. Taz entered the arena and was attacked by the natural duo in the year 2000 of Prince Albert and, you guessed it, the Big Boss Man.
Yes, my notes say that exactly. The natural team of the Big Boss Man and Prince Albert come out.
We have yet another presentation of Prince Albert / A-Train / Lord Tensai, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, Giant Bernard. Here he's extremely hairy, like the hairiest he's ever been. His back, his front, his legs, everything. And then he's got this singlet, but the singlet has like extra straps that I guess is supposed to make you think he's a dominatrix. This was not the best look for him.
No, and he's hanging with the Boss Man. I'd like to see how those two bonded.
This is Big Boss Man after he was Big Bubba Rogers, after he was the Guardian Angel, which we went into in detail this season. If you go back to that episode earlier on in season 3 from that, was it June 1994?
Clash of the Champions?
Yeah, Clash of the Champions, where we have the debut, including that weird video package of the Guardian Angel. Here he's back as the Big Boss Man. He's wearing like SWAT team type of gear. He does not have the Hard Times music, which is extremely disappointing.
He does not. The Big Boss Man is taking on Taz.
This match, the Big Boss Man Wrestling Taz.
In the year 2000.
If you asked 100 wrestling fans, 101 of them would have no idea this match happened, and understandably so.
No, Taz.
Also, because it barely happened.
Yeah, Taz's entrance was cool. I mean, he had a cool presentation in WWE. Like they did, it looked like they were gonna go with it, but then they never did.
Think about 1 month earlier, his debut at the Royal Rumble was incredible. They did everything right. He's got, the mystery opponent for Kurt Angle. The lights go out or the lights dim. You hear that heartbeat. Then the orange 13 flashes on the screen. And here comes Taz in New York City. People lose their minds. He has a good 5-6 minute match with Angle, beats him, and you're like, oh my God, they're going to do something with Taz. And then we see what happens here.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to feuding with the Big Boss Man and Prince Albert in a month?
They start fighting in the aisle. He should have been taller. Taz hits Taz in the ring, hits a Tazplex, then the Taz mission. But Albert jumps in the ring for the disqualification, hits the Baldo bomb on Taz. They beat down Taz some more. He keeps fighting back, but then they hit him in the ribs with a nightstick, and that's all he can take. He's down. He's hurt. But no, Taz keeps fighting back, so he's bleeding from the mouth. He's still fighting, and then the Boss Man. The nightstick is gimmicked, and the Boss Man breaks the nightstick across the head of Taz. It did make a great sound, and it wasn't like the normal fake WWF sound like we used to get with like the tasers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This was like a legit great sound for the exploding nightstick.
No, I sure as hell can't. Boss Man having to use that nightstick twice. Oh, come on. That's enough. Enough's enough. Oh. Good God almighty. For the love of God, the Boss Man just broke the nightstick right across the skull of Taz. Unbelievable. I have never seen a shot to the head quite like that.
Yes, this nightstick came from the same factory that Vampiro's foam cinder block, from that graveyard match that we talked about, I believe in a previous season of this podcast. But no, this whole thing with Taz, again, we talk about windows into Vince McMahon's mind. Whenever there's a quote unquote smaller guy, they always have to be a pit bull. Remember years later, that's how he saw AJ Styles, and that's how they refer to AJ Styles. But here, like Taz, the entirety of the Taz character, what makes the Taz character work is that he's mean, he's nasty, he goes out to the ring, and he kills people. He's like a short version of the Road Warriors. No one thinks of him as being small because you don't tell the people he's small. He doesn't wrestle like he's small, and he throws people down. So what do they do with him in the WWF after that great debut? He's the guy who they constantly tell you how small he is, and instead of being dominant, he's the guy who's small and he won't give up. He's a pit bull. He's fighting back. No one wants to see that out of Taz. And shockingly, it didn't work.
Just brutal. Angle celebrating in the balcony. He's still having a great time celebrating his Intercontinental Championship. No holds barred match. Kane with Paul Bearer taking on X-Pac with Tori, a.k.a. Terry Powers from from our earlier All Japan Women's review from the Patreon feed.
Yeah, so she eliminated herself from an imaginary Royal Rumble. I was hoping to somehow see that.
I was waiting for her to jump over the top rope so I could just fall off my couch. And
this whole story, they recap with a video feature. Kane and Tori were together. It was apparently Kane's first love, his first girlfriend. They turned on him. X-Pac had been teaming with Kane. He turned on Kane. Then Tori and X-Pac made out in front of Kane. This had something to do with wrestling somehow. And then we see something from SmackDown where Kane is just standing completely still for no reason in the entranceway. And then X-Pac comes out. They both stand there for an uncomfortably long period of time. And then he shoots a flamethrower at Kane, which, if I recall, this is one of the rare times where they had to do a reshoot because it didn't work the first time on the taping of SmackDown. They shot this several times. And I'm watching, I'm thinking, if they did 2 takes and this was the best take, they might as well have thrown in and tried a third because this looked awful.
He was reliving the moment that he was burned as a child, I'm told. And I thought back to earlier in this podcast, I pleaded that someone needs to do the complete oral history of the Kane and Undertaker storyline.
Yes.
I need that story. I need someone to do the entire history of that storyline because it makes no sense.
No.
It takes so many left and right turns that absolutely make no sense. So he was badly burned as a child. He will later be unmasked and be shown to have no burns. And so, like, it is a hilarious, I wish someone would do the complete oral history of Kane and the Undertaker story.
Even going back to the fact that when the Undertaker first debuted, he was known as Kane the Undertaker. If you recall, there's not a lot to say about this match.
No.
It was Kane and X-Pac doing a Kane and X-Pac match.
One of the highlights was Paul Bearer ran and he chased Tori.
Yes.
That was fun.
That was good.
No,
and Paul Bearer in a red jacket and black shirt and red pants. So a different look for Paul Bearer. Also, just think of all the times that Paul Bearer turned on the Undertaker, turned on Kane,
want that has to
turned
be part
on Kane to go with the Undertaker, turned on Undertaker to go with Kane. Like, it's people make fun of WCW in 2000 because of Vince Russo, and rightfully so. But man, like, you give a free pass to the lore, if you want to call it that, of the Undertaker and Kane.
Kane's holding the ring steps. X-Pac drop kicks the steps into Kane's face, pins him. Your winner is X-Pac.
This looked really bad because it was the indentation, the triangular indentation, the arc of the stairs that landed on Kane's face, meaning the stairs didn't land on his face, but it somehow kept him from being able to kick out. But that was your finish. I am more intrigued by what came after, where apparently this was a time period where if you sent your cable bill into the WWF,
Get a free shirt.
they would send you a terrible No Way Out t-shirt with Triple H looking like he was auditioning for the WBF. Like, who would wear that shirt?
This is the first pay-per-view for the Radicals. Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn. These four asked for and were given their release from WCW. They signed with WWE and debuted January 31st in the year 2000. The next night after their debut, Eddie Guerrero suffered an elbow injury at the SmackDown tapings.
Yes.
Yeah.
A frog splash, and he landed full force on his elbow, and it, in front of everybody on taped television, just popped out. It was disgusting. And so, yeah, you could not have a more inopportune time to have the injury. Eddie Guerrero, being such a great performer, though, found ways around it. We see footage of him still out there doing moves, getting attacked. He's cutting promos.
We saw him get hit with a bonsai drop by Rikishi.
Yes, a second rope northern exposure, if you will.
That's right. An avalanche
Rikishi
northern
Fatu,
exposure.
We should see, yes. Rikishi Fatu. We're still in that weird time period where they're not calling him Rikishi. They're calling him Rikishi Fatu. He's long gone from making a difference or being a head shrinker or part of a Samoan SWAT team, but he still has the Fatu at the end of his name. We should also mention that if people want to hear a lot more about kind of the beginning of the end of all of these guys that would comprise the Radicals, how their careers ended in WCW, go back and listen to our Foul Brawl 99 podcast that we did several episodes prior here in season 3, and you'll get all the information on that, because that was quite the sordid and winding tale that led them to be in the WWF.
Yeah, WCW at this time backstage trying to downplay the loss of these four guys, claiming that because of the size factor and none being strong on interviews, if you can believe that at the time. That was the thought in WCW. None of these guys were strong.
That Eddie Guerrero couldn't cut a promo.
Nope, can't cut a promo. That they would never make it in WWF, where both those factors are even more important in getting over than in WCW. So that was from Dave Meltzer's reporting in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We then go to Rikishi and Too Cool taking on Saturn, Benoit, and Malenko. How are Too Cool ever baby faces? These two guys come out dancing like just D-bags and morons, and I'm like, how could people like not hate these guys? Like, they were the same Too Cool characters that people legit hated when we go back to the Sunday Night Heat episode we reviewed in season 2.
Particularly Brian Christopher / Grandmaster Sexay, one of the least likable characters.
Yes,
in modern,
the most natural, one of the like Miz level natural heel, right?
Yes, like Miz on Ritalin would be the way to describe him. Just horrible. I do have to throw in here, and just because I mentioned this earlier, seeing Rikishi and Too Cool come out together and seeing the crowd reaction to these guys, it took me back to November of 2003, my first and only ever WWF/WWE main roster show. As far as attending live, as we've mentioned before, was a longtime fan of pretty much everything that wasn't the WWF growing up. All those companies died earlier in the decade. And outside of getting Japanese wrestling tapes, which were not easy to get at that time period, like all there was to really watch was the WWF after WCW and ECW died. And so I tried, and I went to this house show. And when Too Cool and Rikishi came out, and this building lost their minds, I just looked around and I thought, for the first time in my life, at that point, I was 22 years old. I've been watching wrestling since I was 3. For the first time in my life, I thought, maybe I've outgrown this. Maybe pro wrestling just isn't for me. The next day, my dad tells me that he saw a flyer at the gas station that he went to on Sunday morning. And it was a flyer and it said, Sabu, wrestling in Highland, Indiana, but the flyer was for a show that happened the night before, the night that we're at the WWF show. But it said IWA Mid-South on the flyer. So I looked up IWA Mid-South. We went to the next show in December and then went on to have probably my favorite year of live wrestling experiences every month at the Lincoln Center in Highland, Indiana, watching the likes of Samoa Joe, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Chris Hero, Homicide, B-Boy, Claudio Castagnoli, Nigel McGuinness, Petey Williams, Chuck Taylor. I mean, Chuck Taylor came in like a year afterward, but even then, yeah, like that whole run, like from then on, I never, that sort of rekindled my love of wrestling. And for the last 18, 20 years, it's been greater than ever. But that night in Rikishi and Too Cool almost killed my love of wrestling to the point to where this podcast would not have existed. With that, let's talk about this match.
The Radicals came out and they have matching gear. Hell yes. Nobody popped. I reacted like the fans did for Too Cool when the Radicals came out in matching gear. That was phenomenal.
I liked Saturn's white boots. I didn't know that I would like Saturn in white boots, but he looked damn good. And the thing that, just before we talk about the match, I don't know how much there is or isn't to talk about. My overriding takeaway from this is how incredibly motivated, fired up, and just on point more than even usual Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko were in this match. They were out to prove a point to everyone in WCW that even in there with Rikishi, Fatu, and Too Cool, they could be great professional wrestlers. They proved that here.
Even knowing they were going to lose, they came out to just tear the house down. And Eddie, who's not in the match, he tries to hit Rikishi with a pipe. He gets hit with it, takes a huge bump, even with his dislocated elbow, and he goes to the back.
We should mention before we get any deeper in this match, and I know it'll make that one person who quit listening to our podcast a couple of years ago or a couple seasons ago angry because we give this caveat every single time. It is weird to talk about a Chris Benoit match. It is weird to watch a Chris Benoit match. It has not gotten any less weird or any easier since the first time we talked about it, I believe in season 1. I'm sure you
season 1 Royal Rumble 2003 is
yes. So if you want to hear our thoughts on how conflicted we are about all of that, and go back and listen to that, and just know that every single one of those thoughts still applies here.
We're not recapping it because it's available there in the back catalog.
Yes,
we reference it every single time here. So we get a great match here.
I think you're being a little generous.
No, I'm sorry. It got great right at this moment. I can't not talk about the greatest spot ever. This is why I'm so excited. Okay.
Yes.
So Scotty 2 Hotty tags in. And
this is the gift for this week's show, by the way.
How could it not be? I watched this 5 times. I think I texted. I might have sent you the video.
You did.
Like,
you took
I videoed my laptop
on your phone of your screen and sent it to me. You were so excited, and I knew. So when it popped up, the notification popped up on my phone. It said something like, "Greatest thing I've ever seen in my life," and I knew you were watching the rest of the show. I knew, and I'm not lying. I knew that it was going to be this spot.
This was so great. It was so great. I didn't even write it in my notes. I just wrote greatest spot ever and then moved on. So Scotty 2 Hotty's going for the worm, and he just gets nailed out of nowhere, like flying in out of camera view.
Yes, we always enjoy on this show. This might be the number one of all those that we've talked about. Whether it be
this was my favorite.
Rob Van Dam flying from out of frame with a 5-star frog splash. You have no idea it's coming. Ric Flair flying in and out of frame, jumping on the back of Terry Funk in the I Quit match. And you're not doing it enough justice. So this whole match is built up to Scotty 2 Hotty going for and hitting the worm, which was by far my most hated move in the history of professional wrestling at this point. I would watch 500 consecutive top rope sunset flips before I would watch one worm. And so the entire match is built around this. And it also, remember, this is my WCW favorites just coming into the company. And so Scotty Too Hotty. He does all his stupid machinations. He's getting ready to hit it. He bounces off the ropes, and then out of nowhere, appearing like a true savior, Dean Malenko just obliterates, just steals the very soul of Scotty Too Hotty. If his head ended up going through the entranceway like a field goal going through the uprights, I would not have been surprised given the force, the impact of this. The timing was perfect. Dean Malenko, greatest man alive just for this moment.
Oh, so great. Watch the GIF. Just phenomenal.
Just spend a whole day watching it. It'll make you happy.
I watched it 5 times and I could watch it again.
You made it a GIF even though it wasn't a GIF yet. You just kept rewinding and rewinding. It was the first GIF.
Yeah, the popularity of the Worm does reign supreme, though. He finally hits it. And the finish comes with Rikishi hitting Malenko with the Rikishi driver, and then an avalanche northern exposure or a bonsai drop for
Can we
win.
talk about for the briefest moment how terrifying Rikishi's version of the Fire Thunder driver, the Rikishi driver, is here? He hits it several times. And like I think back to in more modern times, I think like a Shuji Ishikawa in All Japan, for example, uses that as his finisher. But as he drops the guy, he kind of has them fall off to the side so they don't take the
pile driver.
Yeah, they don't take the Chono Austin bump or the Owen Austin bump. Take your pick. These were far closer to that than I felt comfortable with, particularly with Dean Malenko, who had serious neck problems before. Everybody was fine, but I shrieked in terror.
Angle still celebrating in the lobby. People having a great time. And now for the WWF title shot at WrestleMania. It's The Rock and the Big Show to end the controversy. We're told Big Show is 28 years old here. And
they said 27.
Jeez.
27 years old. No, Big Show's 28. The Rock
is 27.
The Rock is 27 years old here. And that floored me. You'll be surprised to know, and I say that tongue planted firmly in cheek. The Rock, popular.
What an ovation for this guy. Like, Jesus, you forget, because like nobody gets a reaction like this anymore.
Not unless it's The Rock or Steve Austin coming back.
Nobody gets a reaction like this. So when you see it, it's like jarring. Like, wow,
it is.
It's
especially jarring too, because outside of the transition to HD and maybe slightly bigger Titantrons, like WWF television looks so similar in modern times to how it looks here. And so to see a modern arena with people not really sitting on their hands, but just losing their minds, like it's Kerry Von Erich in 1983 in the Sportatorium, it is, to your point, jarring.
Yeah, we'll go through this pretty quick. They fought outside the ring. They fought through the crowd and the people. Back in the ring, we had a ref bump, Show with a choke slam, got a visual pin. Another ref runs down, but the previous ref pulls a new ref out of the ring. And this all builds to Shane McMahon coming out to another absurdly ridiculous reaction. This was insane.
He gets exactly. He gets a superstar reaction. I mean, in a true sense of the word, not a wrestler calling him a superstar. Like, he gets just a massive, massive pop. It's short-lived though, as well. First we get Tim White runs in to count the pin. Earl Hebner pulls him off. Then Earl Hebner
start fighting. Yeah,
they're having what can only be described as a cat fight on the floor. That is the only description of this horrendous fight. That even though it's happening like almost out of frame, it still is embarrassingly bad. While all this is going on, The Rock is in the ring. He's setting up for the people's elbow, and Shane McMahon, clearly having watched Dean Malenko interrupt the Worm just minutes earlier, one-ups him and hits The Rock with a flying chair shot as The Rock is going for the people's elbow. Tim White gets in the ring, makes the count, and the Big Show wins, and he's going to WrestleMania.
Justice has prevailed. Yes. The Big Show, the rightful winner of the Royal Rumble, is going to WrestleMania. Wins. Thanks to Shane McMahon, he's going to WrestleMania. So the Big Show and Shane McMahon walk out together. Shane looking back menacingly at The Rock.
Am I supposed to be mad at these men?
Yes, you are.
I'm not. I like again, as we talked about, Big Show, he won the Royal Rumble. He got screwed out of his shot. Here, he valiantly fought to get his title shot back. And his buddy Shane McMahon helped him overcome the odds that were stacked against him to win the title. It's a perfect babyface story that apparently is supposed to make me want to see Big Show get beat. I don't get it. It was so convoluted. Jim Ross, though, even in the midst of it being so convoluted, was great, screaming, "Why?"
Yes, very much. Very much. So Jim Ross, MVP of the show. Hell in a Cell, your main event. WWF Championship versus Mick Foley's career. The champion, Triple H, with Stephanie McMahon, come out. The challenger, Cactus Jack, makes his way out. We get another video recapping past Hell in the Cell matches. They left out the Boss Man versus Undertaker from WrestleMania 15, but had the other ones.
The Kennel from Hell. So technically, it was not a Hell in the Cell match, but yes, that was a great call by them to leave that out. Also, great call, Jim Ross in the video feature, saying that the cell is, quote, custom built for injury.
Loved it.
I love that. He also called it the device of doom and destruction as the cage is being lowered. A couple quick notes. This is a version of the WWF Championship that I have no recollection of, but I love it. It is a bigger...
Yeah, they call it the Big Eagle
yes,
for belt collectors. This is the Big Eagle. This is the follow-up to the Winged Eagle, the one that you would know from the debut at the WrestleMania 4. But the Big Eagle belt is fantastic. It is a great championship.
It looks great.
Yeah,
it looks great. It's a modern version of the Winged Eagle belt, and it does the rarest of the rare in that it attempts to kind of draw upon a previous title belt and improve it. And I dare say it did. I would have been totally fine with this being the title belt going forward.
Yeah, it was all the complaints about, the big gold belt was so cool because it was big and it was significantly bigger than the Winged Eagle. So this actually added some size and it looked like a world championship. So this was fantastic.
I would call it the reverse in terms of the evolution of the main championship of a promotion as compared to the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, the great, the fourth generation, that beautiful belt, maybe the best wrestling championship belt of all time, shifting to the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship belt, which was not as great.
No.
They did not accomplish what WWF did here.
Speaking of belts, we see Kurt Angle wearing both his belts, and he's still celebrating as Chris Jericho attacks him and Chyna throws Angle into the trunk of his own car. The cage is now lowered, and Cactus Jack, it's all Cactus Jack to start the match.
Well, also, there's 10 padlocks and chains all over the door because the whole story is that they don't want Foley to escape and be able to go to the top of the cage and deliver even more destruction. So they're attempting to keep him caged inside the cell.
Cactus backdrops Triple H over the top to the floor. He grabs a chair, but Triple H cuts him off. He knocks him off the apron into the cage. Triple H throws Cactus into the stairs. He does the knee first, hits hard into the stairs.
Yeah, if you wonder why Mick Foley has trouble walking now, it's because of all those times he took those knees to the stairs. So unnecessary. It was cool. It looked cool.
It was always cool. Looked cool, sounded cool, but man, had to be brutal.
Yeah.
Triple H throws the stairs into Cactus's face.
Oh.
Back in the ring, Triple H hits some sick chair shots, one to the face, and it gets a long 2 count. Cactus is able to fight back. Hits a low blow with the chair. Then his double arm DDT.
A low blow with the chair that Jim Ross calls, direct quote, barbaric birth control.
Cactus gets caught with the drop toe hold. He goes head first into the chair.
Whoa, this was not fun.
He gets thrown back of the head first, repeatedly against the cage. Cactus then hits a slingshot, though, sending Triple H into the cage, and he gets busted open. Triple H is now bleeding.
Cactus countered a pile driver attempt on the stairs. harkening back to Shawn Michaels using the pile driver on the stairs in a previous Hell in the Cell. But Cactus Jack is able to, as you said, reverse it with a catapult of sorts. And we have blood in a WWF cage match, which there wouldn't be too many years.
Needs it.
It does. A Hell in a Cell, a War Games, any of those things. If you're a promotion that does not allow blood, you should not be doing matches.
Don't have those matches.
Just do not have those matches. It's fine. Just stay away from them. It always drove me crazy when even in the latter years of WCW, they would do a War Games without blood. Just don't.
Cactus comes off the second turnbuckle, diving with a chair-assisted elbow drop to the floor onto Triple H.
At this point, Jerry Lawler gives away the result of this match when he says that, and I guess gives away the result of everything that's coming for the next month when he says, if Cactus Jack wins, it will be in the main event of WrestleMania 2000, Cactus Jack versus the Big Show for the WWF title. At that point, I knew that there is no way Cactus Jack is winning this match.
No, because everything was building to Triple H versus The Rock for the championship.
Yes.
Every single thing was building to that.
And I don't think anyone watched the Big Show defeat The Rock here and thought,
oh, that means Cactus is going. That's legit what they did. They honestly thought that would also make you believe the title changes earlier, the Big Show winning, that Cactus had a chance to win this match.
All it did was make me think that Big Show is somehow going to lose this title shot to The Rock beforehand. There was nothing you could do to convince me with how Big Show had been booked in his first few years in the WWF that he was going to main event WrestleMania 2000. It just did not seem possible, and it was not going to happen, as we'll find out.
Cactus throws the steps at Triple H, and it busts through the cage wall, putting a hole into the cage. Foley, his arm is cut, and it's bleeding.
Well, because he then runs himself through the cage to open it up
make the hole bigger, and then he gets outside the cage.
Well, he gets out, but he almost gets out. It's not big enough yet. So then he throws Triple H through it. And now they're both out, as you said. Cactus from putting himself through the cage, through the fencing. His arm is all bloodied up, and Triple H is still bleeding as well.
We get a pile driver by Cactus on the announce table, and it doesn't break.
Oof, yeah,
loud Foley chants for this one.
Yeah, that not breaking announce table was rough to see as well. We then see Cactus Jack start looking up, and he starts climbing the side of the cage. People are going nuts. We should also note that this, I think, was the first time that in the Hell in the Cell, the actual structure itself, they had put little holes in the cage that are basically hand holes for you to climb up. The announcers didn't mention it, but it was clearly there.
Yeah, you could kayfabe say that that's for cameramen to be able to get a view, but
in case the cameramen need to climb 3/4 of the way up the cage to get a dramatic shot through this tiny hole, I guess.
So yeah, from behind the timekeeper's table, Cactus pulls out a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire. Cactus hits Triple H in the face with it. Triple H tries to run away by climbing up to the top of the cage. Foley follows him up with the 2x4.
With a handy loop that is attached to the 2x4 so he can carry it over his shoulder. That cracked me up. Like he's so barbaric that he's putting barbed wire around a 2x4, but he's also so logical that he said, let me attach a handle on that. Let me get a handle. Let me get a nice little loop on here. So if I need to climb up the cage, I can bring my barbed wire board with me.
Foley holding on to the top of the cage. Triple H from the top of the cage is able to knock Cactus off. He falls off the cage through a table, not thrown off the top like in the Undertaker match. He was already hanging down his full body length and goes through the table, but still a good 13 feet probably.
It was more of a callback to the Shawn Michaels bump. It was
much more like the Shawn Michaels bump, exactly.
Yes, from the first Hell in the Cell in 1997 with The Undertaker, then it was the off the top of the cage Insanity from 1998. And it's what we talked about earlier right before we started recording, that this match had an impossible standard to live up to in terms of what the fans expected. in that, well, there was no one in the building that actually wanted to see Mick Foley die for real. They wanted to see something as crazy, if not crazier, happen with Mick Foley than they saw in 1998. But they couldn't do that because, again, if they did anything that crazy or crazier, Mick Foley would have legitimately died. So we kind of got this in between instead.
Cactus is bleeding from the forehead. He's back up. He grabs a chair. He tries to throw chairs to the top of the cage, but misses repeatedly.
Well, this cage is like 25 feet high.
Yeah, this wasn't going to happen.
And he's Cactus Jack, and his arm is all messed up. So there's one, they show the first two from far away, then they cut away. And the third time, apparently, the chair like ricochets off the side of the cage and hits Jerry Lawler.
Cactus climbs up, and Triple H hits him with the barbed wire 2x4. Both guys are on top of the cage. The barbed wire sticking to the clothes of Cactus Jack is a great visual.
Yeah, ripping the flannel shirt.
A low blow, and Cactus fights back. There's a hole in the corner of the roof, which is scary.
Well, they almost go through. Yeah, they're going to the corner of the cage, on the top of the cage. Triple H bumps on that spot, and they almost go through. And I do not think this was a planned part of the cage that was supposed to break.
No, that's a reinforced part of the cage.
Yes.
So they reinforced like one side of the roof. The other roof was gimmicked to break, which we'll get to in a second.
Yes, this was not a spot where they were supposed to go through. They almost went through, and that could have been disastrous. This was scary, and it reinforced, even though it was not meant to happen, it reinforced as you're watching it just how dangerous this whole thing is.
Oh, a suplex on top of the cage was brutal, as well as there's support bars up there. Looked like it hurt. Cactus then...
Well, it was... The good thing about the support bars being there when they did the suplex was guaranteed cage not collapsing in that spot.
Yes.
The bad thing is, I'm sure it hurt a lot more to get suplex on those bars than it would have been on the fencing if you could guarantee the fencing wasn't going to give way.
Cactus lights the 2x4 on fire.
I don't know if anything could be worse. Oh my God! Oh my God! The 2x4, the barbed wire is burning. What? The 2x4 is burning. Get out of there, Hunter! Do you see this? Cactus Jack, jump! Jump! Hunter, you better get out of there. You gotta call the fire department. Get a net jump. He's got a fire. Cactus just hit Hunter in the face with that burning 2x4. Oh, this one, the dream is going to come true. Cactus has a dream, and it's coming true tonight.
What a visual of Cactus Jack standing on top of this Hell in the Cell structure with a flaming barbed wire board. That was awesome.
Cactus goes to pile drive Triple H onto the fire, but Triple H backdrops Cactus, and the cage breaks away. Cactus falls into the ring, onto a section of the ring that was gimmicked for like a crash pad, and this was a planned cage break and crash area, and Cactus landed perfectly in it.
Yeah, when you see the replays, he landed, and again, I'm glad he did, but he landed like a stuntman pro on this.
Yeah,
it looked, I mean, it obviously was gimmicked, but it looked great. I mean, it was kind of the next evolution of insanity with going through the ring from what we saw a couple years earlier in ECW with Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, that's crazy enough, but thinking about 1998, how crazy those unplanned falls were. Good God. Yeah. Like when you watch that match knowing that was unplanned and how hard he hit and fell and the damage he did to himself, it's insane to think about.
Yes. And it's also, like, I understand they gimmick this, but it's also crazy to think that they did a spot like that planned after the tragedy with Owen Hart. And I know that wasn't in a cage. I know that was something completely different. But looking back at it, it is amazing that they made the decision to do something like that less than a year after that.
The Cactus is still moving, and Triple H is pissed. Triple H picks him up, hits the pedigree, gets the pin, still champion. Triple H Mick Foley, Cactus Jack's career is over.
This, JR. Oh, wait. Cactus is moving. What? And Triple H can't believe it. Cactus is moving somehow, some way. The crazy son of a bitch is moving. How does he do this, JR? How's he still alive? Oh, what a right hand by the game. How in the hell is Cactus even moving? I don't even understand how moving. I don't understand how he's alive, JR. And I think Triple H just wants him to stop. His dream is motivating him, King. Cactus' lifelong dream of main eventing at WrestleMania is keeping him in the hunt. Oh my God, this will finish it. Triple H going for the pedigree. No dream is worth it. Oh, sick. That's gotta be it. No dream was worth this. Kick out, Cactus. Wow. Sick. Triple H is going to WrestleMania, but I'm looking at a man I'll never forget. Cactus Jack is lying motionless on the canvas. He gave us everything he had in him tonight. What more could any of us have asked the challenger for the WWF title?
They do a great job here, as the WWF always would do, in terms of letting the moment sink in, whether it was a title change, a big turn, a career-defining incident like this. We see replays over and over and over of that final fall through the cage. We get lingering close-ups on Mick Foley as he's leaving. Jim Ross is just at his best, basically eulogizing the career of Mick Foley, Cactus Jack.
That's one of the most respected and beloved men to ever compete in our business. And there's a lot of jerks in this business, folks. There's a lot of asses in this business, but that is one of the finest men in or out of this business I've ever known. And Mick Foley has seen his last match. Mick Foley's career is over, folks. Every person in this arena, JR, is still here, and everyone is standing. One more look at the end. If you can stand the end of the match and the end of the career. If you're not standing up in front of your television and giving this man a standing ovation, then where's your heart? Where's your love of the game? And I ain't talking about Triple H. Cactus looking for the last time. The final farewells to all his fans. Thanks to the game, Mick Foley's career is over. Well, these people have loved Mick Foley for 15 years, but I hope we can hear what we're hearing. Hope we can see what we're seeing. Standing ovation for Mick Foley, who has taken his final walk from a World Wrestling Federation ring. Goodbye, my friend. That's the goodbye. Goodbye, Cactus. Thanks for the great memories, buddy. You're going to be missed, Cactus. Godspeed, Mick Foley.
I also have to say the visual of Foley coming up, rising from that hole. It's like he went all the way through and you didn't see him, but just him laid out and looking completely motionless and then dragging himself out of that hole. And then the flash, the cut to Triple H's face. That was some top-notch WWF cinematography.
When Foley did the interview before No Way Out and this match, the idea from his standpoint, according to Mick Foley, as reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, was that it was to be his last match for a long time. He was originally going to just do an interview at WrestleMania as his farewell appearance and then come back down the line as a commissioner. However, the lure of big payoffs and an eventual program with The Rock and being able to be in the main event of WrestleMania in the WrestleMania 2000 as opposed to the any time after, that combined with the idea that he felt nobody really believed he was retiring, he decided to come back immediately, which
well,
is
think about his Think about his mentor, his hero,
Terry
his role model, Terry Funk. Like the only thing he did was just accelerate the timeline between retirement and comeback.
I was at the March 20th, 2000 edition of Raw in Chicago. It was a really fun live TV wrestling show. The crowd was white hot. Like this crowd was great on this Connecticut show, but this was like one of those legendary Chicago white hot crowds that were into everything.
I was going to say, you're telling me that a Chicago crowd was into a wrestling show.
This is one of those ones that added to the legend of the Chicago crowds. They ended up doing the WrestleMania 3-way main event. They had Triple H versus The Rock versus The Big Show for the championship at that show. And after the match is when Linda McMahon came out and announced that the WrestleMania main event would be a 4-way elimination match with Mick Foley in as she would, McMahon in every corner. Foley would be her representative, and he ran in, cleaned house on Triple H and The Big Show, while The Rock was in the crowd chasing Shane McMahon as that show went off the air, leading to WrestleMania 2000.
That was not a WrestleMania that you were at in person, though, correct?
I was not. That was in Anaheim, I believe. And my first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 18 in Toronto. So I was 2 years away from going to my first WrestleMania.
There you go.
But this was a very good show. Jim Ross, to me, was the MVP of this show. He made everything better. And this was, a pretty deep roster when you looked at like top of the card and all the way down. And this was a good show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It also it goes to show how deep this roster was, that you did not have Steve Austin on the show. You did not have The Undertaker on the show. And it did not feel like it was lacking in star power or, guys who deserve to be on the pay-per-view. I would agree that Jim Ross was the main event of this show. An honorable mention to Howard Finkel, because it was so great to hear him.
So great.
I would say, the Triple H Cactus Jack match was very good. It, if anything, as I said earlier, it just suffered from, there's no way it could be their street fight from the month earlier. And there's no way it could live up to whatever people's fantasies in their head were of what Mick Foley was going to do in this match. But it was very entertaining. As far as an actual just straight in-ring action, I don't know. I would say either the Hardys Edge and Christian match or the Jericho Angle opener would be, my favorite thing on the show.
Yeah, I would agree. Do you have a worse thing on the show?
Oh, it's got to be that whole Taz Boss Man thing.
That was terrible. That was not good.
X-Pac Kane wasn't great either.
X-Pac Kane, no, it was
just there.
It was just there. I think that probably does take the cake as the worst thing on this show.
Best thing on the show we should mention, if we're talking about a moment, clearly Dean Malenko putting an end to the worm.
Breaking up the worm in spectacular fashion is by far my favorite thing I've seen, maybe in season 3. This
going out with a bang.
This was great. And with that, we are calling it a season here. We will be back, so make sure you stay subscribed on any podcatcher platform of choice. Stay subscribed. We will be back for season 4. In the meantime, this is your time to catch up on episodes. We mentioned a bunch in the back catalog during this show on the free feed. If you haven't caught up, that's evergreen content. Go back, listen to those free feed episodes, catch up on that right now. If you are current and you're like, oh man, I'm current, now I gotta wait, what a bummer. No, you've got, at this point in time, 60 plus episodes over in the bonus content. We told you how to subscribe earlier. All those links are available at Wrestling at Random and our social media feeds at Wrestle at Random for Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Wrestling at Random as well. WrestlingAtRandom.com again has all of those links, the entire back catalog, and all the ways you can support this show. And thank you for supporting the show for 3 full seasons now. Please continue to tell your wrestling fan friends about the show. They will hopefully enjoy taking a trip down memory lane with us.
Yes, and make sure to tell your former wrestling fan friends about us. Maybe you have an even more convoluted history with your friend slash former friend than the Brothers of Destruction,
Impossible.
Kane and
Nobody.
Undertaker, do.
No, nobody.
And
If you yes, if you want to take your season break to write out the complete history of the Kane and Undertaker storyline, please do that as well. I'm looking for that. That would be great reading. And with that, I think we're going to call it a podcast. We're going to call it a season. Adam, thanks for joining us.
thank you, Jeremy. What a great time again. We always say that like this podcast, obviously, we're thrilled to have everyone listening. We're glad that you're enjoying the show. But as much as anything, this is an excuse for you and I to watch stuff that we most likely would never go back and watch or have never seen before. Sometimes it's something that the randomizer picks and it fills a blind spot, something that we meant to watch. Other times it's something that we can't fathom having to watch it again, or it's just a random episode of TV from some show we would have never watched. It's always fun. It's always fun being able to talk wrestling with you, share that with the listeners, and excited that we will continue to do that during the break over in the bonus content feed, and looking forward to what season 4 brings as well.
Absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for telling your wrestling fan friends about the show. And thank you for continuing to support us. And thank you to all of our patrons as well for continuing to support the show. We couldn't do the free feed without you. So thanks again, everyone, for listening. Talk to you again next time.